let's look at what goes into a floor plan. Now, first of all, what is a plan view? Officially speaking, a plan is the view of a building looking straight down as if a giant saw cut through the building 4 feet above the floor. And you take the top half of the building and throw it away in your mind, and what's left is that bottom view, and you can see where that imaginary saw blade cut through the walls, and now you're in an airplane looking straight down. That is what you see. We use this plan view to make a lot of other drawings. So we might have a mechanical plan of the HVAC system, we might have a plumbing plan, and so on and so forth. And from our plan view, we can also make an elevation drawing, which we'll look at next time. And the plan and the elevation will be drawn to the same scale. By the way, I have a bunch of words in this PowerPoint that might be more words than you are interested in, and I have just put them in here for your reference later. If you are at a job where you really need to know lots of details about these plans, you can refer back to this PowerPoint and get some more information. You will recall when we talked about sheet numbering that the sheet number for a plan view starts with a 1. So for example, if it were architectural, you might say A101. And there are several kinds of plan views. I've listed some of them here. They often go in this order, although they don't have to. We'll look at our Building 15 plan set in a minute. When you draw walls in plan view, you use thick lines, and when we say thick, we actually mean 0.35. And when we draw windows, that is glazing, we use thin lines, and we use thin lines for a lot of other things too, like cabinetry and so forth. Now, if you draw a plan view of a house, a residential thing, and it's wood framed, even though the wall thickness might not be exactly a certain thickness, when we draw a house, we always offset the wall lines 6 inches apart. In commercial buildings, we don't stick with that 6-inch offset spacing. It it depends on what kind of construction you have in the wall, and here are some guidelines. On a plan, you always need to have a few basic things. You must have a scale. What scale was this drawn to? That is, what scale is your viewport? You have some column grid lines, which we're going to look at in a minute. You have a north arrow, and oftentimes you have a plan that keys in where in the site or in the bigger building is this floor plan located. So here's a little bit more about stuff that we put in a plan. Also in a plan, we have room numbers. And we'll see some of these view arrows and section arrows that tell the reader what sheet to go to find this or that. Here's an excerpt out of our textbook, so you can see here are some room numbers. These circle things are referring the reader to another page, so this one right here says go to page A5 where you will see view 5 and so forth. And then these bubbly things, those are grid lines. And every commercial project uses grid lines. They are usually regularly spaced. You call these bays, the space between one grid line and another. They are regularly spaced, and they locate the primary columns and other structural members in the commercial building. And then every plan view and elevation view and usually section view also includes these grid lines. And they're illustrated with bubbles. Across the top are numbers, and along the side are letters. What we're looking at in this particular sheet is a plan view of a structural steel framework. And so these H-shaped things are looking down on wide flange steel beams, which are used as columns in this building. We use thin lines for the grids so that they stand out from the actual objects, which are thick lines. Oftentimes you will see center lines used as grids, although when we go look at our Building 15 drawing, you'll see that they've just used continuous lines. And you want to extend your grid line bubbles way out beyond the building so that they can't possibly get mixed up with the building. And as this last bullet point says, it's okay to use those grid lines to run dimensions off of. So you could dimension from one column center line to the next one, for example. Here's an example. Those bubbles that are the grid line markers are 3/8 of an inch in diameter when the drawing is printed. Here's an example. I think this is a drugstore that has all that stuff we've just been talking about. I'm going to keep going. And here's a little bit more detail about numbering the floors. I'll let you come back to this if you need it at work. Then also in plan views, you might see some enlarged scale views of things like stairways, for example. This is out of our textbook. Or restrooms. This is very common. Here you see the grid line bubbles. Here's a view arrow telling you where you're going to find an interior elevation on page A 2.0 looks like. There's some dimensions for this restroom and so forth. This one is from the National CAD Standard, and there's a classic view arrow again. So this is telling you page A203 is going to have an interior elevation, and here is the room number for this restroom, so on and so forth. Let's go look at a set of plans, a small set of plans for Building 15, which is the building that the drafting program is located in. So it's let me make this big so we don't get distracted. This is saved as a PDF. So Building 15, that has some renovations done to it by Robertson Sherwood Architects. And here, I think we've looked at this sheet before. Here is who worked on the project, the index of page numbers, the symbols, and all of that. So this is a general sheet. Look at the sheet numbering. This is General Sheet 1.0. Here's General Sheet 1.1. This one is put in here for building code analysis. Egress is a very important part of the building code. When you do a plan submittal, the plans examiner is going to make really sure that you have met the law for getting people out of the building safely in the event of a fire. So that's why they have a separate sheet for this. All right, so now notice the sheet number has changed. Now we're in the architectural sheets. Here's A101. And as you can see here, this is the demo plan. So they're marking what's going to get torn out. Now sheet A1.1, here's the floor plan for the ground floor of this building. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. I hope this works. So, and I hope I don't freak out the viewer here. Oh, yeah, see, it did. Okay, here's the floor plan. And so here is the CAD classroom where you might have had the CAD class, and here's the other drafting classroom. And you will see here are the grid lines. These are structural concrete columns, and they have grid lines that are numbered. Then along the side there are grid lines that are lettered. Here are, I hope I don't make the thing freak out. I want to show you that, yes, down here at the bottom of the sheet, there's the scale that this sheet is scaled to. Here's a north arrow showing which way is north. Here are these blocks with room numbers in them. Those are required. And then over to the side, here are some enlarged details. So here is a restroom. This is crossed out because I think they did a change order and they later did the restroom a little bit differently. And now notice in this restroom, here is a view arrow. It's got 4 arrows on it, and it's saying you're going to find 4 different interior elevations for this restroom on sheet A3.1. And you're also going to find 4 interior elevations on sheet A3.1 for the other restroom. So now let's see if I can make this look more reasonable. And now let's go to sheet A3.1. Here it is. And look, here are the interior elevations for that women's restroom and some other stuff, hallway and so forth. So if you were an estimator doing some bid preparation, you can see how you'd be doing some flipping back and forth. You'd go to that plan view to see some information, then you'd flip to this interior elevation sheet to see some more information. Here on the next page, there's, I think these are interior elevations for the CAD labs. Look, there's the whiteboard and there's the door and all of that. And just to finish out this sheet set, we'll just keep looking. Here is a schedule page. So this is listing precisely what kinds of doors and precisely what type of finishes are used. And then here are some details for the doors at the bottom. And then the last 2 sheets in the drawing set are various kinds of close-up details. And these details, see that bubble there? These details would have been referenced in the plan view. Notice how, ooh, can I do this? Notice how that detail bubble says this detail is on sheet A5.1. And we are on sheet A5.1. So if you're doing estimating for this particular kind of material connection, you would have been flipping from that plan view to this sheet. And then here's one more detail sheet. This one is for the roof stuff. So there you are.